Well, Secretary Antony Blinken is making the rounds with Arab Muslim leaders to make plans for the day after the war in Gaza concludes. Blinken met with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah Wednesday. They spoke about post-war plans for Gaza and what would be required to create a unified Palestinian state. Listen.
Today I had an opportunity to meet with President Abbas in Ramallah, and we talked about those efforts. We talked as well about the importance of reforming the Palestinian Authority, Palestinian governance, so that it can effectively take responsibility for Gaza, so that Gaza and the West Bank can be reunited under Palestinian leadership. It's very clear to me from President Abbas that he's prepared to move forward and engage in all of these efforts.
Meanwhile, the UN and the international community has involved itself in this war, and Iranian proxies continue to use the conflict to destabilize the larger region. But it will be the Palestinians and Israelis themselves who have to live as neighbors the day after the war. That simple realization is how the Trump administration's visionary document for peace to prosperity begins. Now, my next guest was involved behind the scenes with Jared Kushner and the Trump White House in presenting the peace to prosperity deal to the Palestinians, and then what evolved into the historic Abraham Accords a few months later. Lisa Daftari is a foreign affairs analyst and an editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk. We want to welcome Lisa to the show. Lisa, thank you so much for being here. So in your opinion, what happens after the war, and are the Abraham Accords dead?
You know, it's very difficult because we're probably in the darkest moment and the farthest we've ever been in modern history to get peace in the Middle East. And we've always evolved the concept of peace in the Middle East as peace between the Palestinians and Israelis, and that is why it seems so weak right now. But what the Abraham Accords were successful in doing is sidestepping that myth and saying there can be prosperity in the Middle East because the moderate elements of the Middle East, that's Israel and many moderate Arab states, want prosperity. They want trade deals, public and private. They want to share innovation. They want to have tourism and obviously bring a lot more to each of their economies. And it proved to be successful in its short run, and it continues to be successful. I think many of those moderate Arab states are waiting for that day after the war because they find themselves in a very, very uncomfortable position right now. They do not want to withdraw from the Abraham Accords, but at the same time, they find that the optics are that they have to support and offer support to the Palestinian people. So that's where we find ourselves right now. I think it's very difficult to say what will be, but I will say this. This war has brought about or underscored the importance of containing Iran's regime and its proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, all of the support that it gives to these extremist elements. And when you look at Iran's regime, you look at a Biden administration that for 3 years gave them very mixed signaling, taking the Houthis off the list, removing vital sanctions, doing a lot of things that gave the Iranian regime the green light to carry out a lot of these exercises. The Abraham Accords will come right back into play when the Arab nations, spearheaded by Saudi Arabia, and hopefully they will become signatory to the Accords or normalize relations with Israel in some capacity, they will understand, and again, this is being underscored by the war right now, how important it is to curb Iran's regime.
Yeah, so yesterday we heard from both the State Department and the White House warning Iran and Houthi rebels about, future attacks in the Red Sea. But Lisa, do you think anyone is listening? Does Iran want a war, or are they just causing disruption in the Middle East? And if that's the case, they're causing disruption, what is the benefit, in your opinion?
Deterrence does not start on the battlefield. Deterrence started 3 years ago when the Biden administration began emboldening Iran's regime. It is now very difficult to serve up these warnings and think that Iran's regime is actually scared of the current White House or the international community. Are they scared of any warnings or any acronymed organization that is attempting to call them? Are they scared of any human rights organizations when they're being honored at the UN with different committee titles? It is it is horrific what is happening. It is awful to see the hypocrisy. And in such a short period of time, we see what a weak foreign policy has done to us on the global stage. We're watching as Russia and China and Iran's regime laugh at us. We're watching as the Taliban in Afghanistan and North Korea cozy up to our enemies and become further emboldened. And we're watching as terror organizations are being propped up while our ally in the region, Israel, is being condemned left, right, and center. This is all, it's very damaging, and it will have reverberations down the line.
Yeah, I want to go back to the peace and prosperity plan. I mean, it was estimated that it would take $7 to $10 billion to rebuild Gaza, but it would require and it would create 1 million jobs. It would reduce the poverty rate in half. The only thing that was really holding the plan back, Lisa, was Hamas. Investors, they were not confident as long as Hamas was in charge in Gaza. Does Israel's dismantling of Hamas now provide a pathway for this plan? And does this require a Trump administration?
There's a few different things to unpack here. So the deal was never even, it was dead on arrival from the Palestinians. And that's why Trump and Jared Kushner kind of moved on to say, okay, let's think outside the box and see what we can do. The reason why this deal did not work out then is multiple reasons. One, they wanted the money as a lump sum and not something that would trickle into being controlled rather by the West. They wanted full control of the plan. Secondly, as you said, there are different factions within the Palestinian Authority, between the Palestinian Authority rather and Hamas. This is something that the media never covered. Weeks before October 7th, you saw Palestinians on the street actually protesting Hamas. Of course, they risked their lives doing so, but there are many, many Palestinians who would like to speak out. After October 7th, that sentiment has changed. You see a lot of polls with Palestinians approving of October 7th, approving of Hamas, all of a sudden rallying around the flag of Hamas after the attacks, of course. Now, once the dust settles, will the Palestinians understand that they have to unite, A, B, work with the international community in bringing about peace, and C, have to coexist, meaning what will be in their best interest? They will have to look forward into a future of prosperity. That is the option on the table. It's the best deal they ever got. Unfortunately, they didn't know it at the time. Hopefully, this will change the course. And to say a future of what? Terrorism? Yeah. I mean, look at the children learning arithmetic through terror, learning about killing Jews from the day that they can talk and read and understand and comprehend. This is all horrific. This all has to be reformed. We have to look at the funding that's going into UNRWA, into the schools that are supporting this indoctrination, into groups like Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad hiding missiles in schools, in mosques, in hospitals. I mean, the whole system has to be reformed if they want to move forward. And again, Stella, I thank you for talking about the day after, because that is something that we have to look and see how we can best bring some stability to the region.
It just amazes me that the international world doesn't see it for what it is. I mean, they say, oh my goodness, Israel is the oppressor, and Israel is stronger. Well, Israel has the Iron Dome. Israel spends the money to protect itself in that region. Hamas took the money from its people and built tunnels. And there's so much poverty there and so much brainwashing. But I also want to ask you about this. I think this is important. Today, Israel is facing the ridiculous case of a genocide brought by South Africa. I want to listen to sound of how Israel's foreign affairs minister responded today, and then we'll talk.
Mm-hmm. I think we've seen today one of the biggest shows of hypocrisy in history, when South Africa became the legal arm of a terror organization, Hamas. They are trying to blame Israel for what Hamas is doing to the Palestinian people. They are trying to blame Israel for the situation in Gaza that Hamas is responsible to. And this is exactly the reality. While they are trying to blame the victim that was attacked.
I don't know how else to say it. Sadly, it's a clown show. Hamas is still holding people hostage, refusing any ceasefire. They committed a genocidal act on October 7th. In the Hamas charter, they encourage the death of Jews. And the judges in this case are elected by the UN, who we know runs cover for Hamas. I mean, Lisa, what are we watching here?
Absolute clown show. Thank you. And I appreciate you bringing this up and calling it ridiculous as it is. Look, from where I sit covering terrorism for over 15 years now, it's horrific to think that Israel's the one who has to be answering those questions. And to watch a global community, whether it's on social media, at the UN, at universities, condemn Israel and to call it genocide and to bring them to court to bring about a ceasefire before calling for the hostages to be released. I mean, the quickest way to get to a ceasefire, if that's the end goal, is to demand that Hamas put down its arms, demand that Hamas release the hostages. I mean, what the international community just forgets conveniently is how many times Hamas has rejected a ceasefire option in the last 3 months. I mean, it's crazy to think how many atrocities we watch around the world, real atrocities. And when they were asked why Hamas was not brought to the court, they said, well, Hamas isn't a real state. We can't bring them to the court. So Israel's the one who has to be brought in after they were attacked by an organization that actually calls for genocide in its charters.
Right.
And now they're calling Israel the committer of genocide.
Let's not forget, there was a ceasefire on October 6th. Israel did not want this. And it just amazes me how the mainstream media covers this so unfairly. They could do better. They know they could do better, and they're not.
And they're not. And that is on them. It is on them. They're complicit in this. The members of Congress, those who are at the universities, those who are on social media
100%.
with millions of followers. It's a disservice when you are brainwashing a whole generation and not giving them the real facts to fight and eradicate extremism and to stop anti-Semitism and all kinds of bigotry and hate. It's really uncomfortable. And thank you, Stella, for bringing these stories to light.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. DEI must die, because what's happening right now is these young journalists who are being taught in the universities who have these DEI initiatives go back into the newsrooms, and this is why you see what's happening in our mainstream media. Lisa Daftari, appreciate your analysis. Thank you so much.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.